to my sewing room in the north of England. It's autumn here and the leaves are starting to fall from the trees, and it's the kind of time when you start thinking about sitting in front of the fire with a nice cup of coffee and a piece of cake. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make this cafetiere cover. I designed this pattern when I went to visit my friend in Cornwall. She lives on a small holding, and we had some coffee and we took it outside, and she wrapped a tea towel around a coffee pot just like this one in order to keep it warm, and it gave me the idea of a cover where you could actually put it on the coffee pot while the plunger is up, put it on your tray, take it to where you're going to be having your coffee, and then put the plunger down. Now the way I've designed this is so that it is quite sturdy and it stands up on its own, so you can pop it on and take it off easily without having to hold the coffee pot. I've put an applique heart on it. You could put an initial or a cat or a dog or something like that on it, whatever you want that suits your style or maybe the person who you're going to make it for. And just to explain about the ties, they're really mainly for decoration. But it makes having the ties there makes the cover easier to make. You can undo them, but they're partly for decoration, but they're also you don't have to untie them to take the cover off. So you could pick it up like that if you wanted to, using the handle through the ties. It doesn't have a hole for pouring. It's not designed to be like that. It's designed to be taken off, put the plunger down, and then put it back to keep it warm for the next cup. This one here is the size for a cafetiere like this. It's a fairly standard size, and it would hold 2 to 3 full mugs like that, and maybe 5 or 6 little coffee cups like that. So I'll just go through some of the materials that you'll need and some of the equipment that you'll need. So first of all, you'll need your pattern. You can download this from the link that I'll provide in the description, and you'll also need scissors, thread, your sewing machine, and pins or clips. And in terms of the material, I've used a variety when I've made these. This is curtain weight fabric, and if you use something of that weight, say for instance this musical fabric here, you probably won't need to use any fusible fleece. But for instance, for this type of fabric, which is a quilting weight fabric, it's a good idea to back it with something like either quilt it or back it with perhaps a fusible fleece. Then you'll need lining material, and this is just sort of fairly lightweight cotton, which is suitable for lining. That's to go in the lining here, but also it's a good idea to use that weight of fabric for the ties and the top, because it makes it easier to tie the bow if it's not such thick fabric. And then I use a similar type of fabric for the top, because if you use thick fabric, when you want that elasticated to scrunch up, if it's too thick it'll be too bulky. So even if you use a furnishing weight for here, use a lighter weight cotton for around here. In terms of the padding and the thing that's going to make the cosy warm, you've got a variety of options. You can use something like this polyester batting, quilting. In the UK we call this wadding. You could use a piece of batting like this. Perhaps you've got bits left over from making quilts, or you can use something. This is called Insulbright, which is the material that is used to line oven gloves and pot holders. It has a kind of crinkly, almost metallic layer, and it's an insulating fabric. And what that does is it does completely insulate it, and it also, because it's quite stiff, it makes the cosy stand up on its own like that. You can also upcycle materials. This is a piece of old woolen blanket, and I recently cut up one of these to make the inside for quilts, so I've got lots of scraps left. So you could use something like that, any insulating material. So once you've downloaded your pattern, cut out the pieces where indicated. So use your template to cut out the insulating layer and the outside layer and the lining. Pin it in place and cut around. Join up the pieces where indicated and make your casing and your ties. So that's the outer piece. Now the lining fabric, you have it exactly the same dimensions as the outer, except you just have it 1 inch deeper. And the reason for that is, this is how I've ended up with this through trial and error. The reason is because of the thickness of the cover. The way it's constructed, if you have it all the same size, because you're going to flip it round the right way, so if you have it all the same size, what you sometimes find is that your lining comes up short. You'll see what I mean when we make it. So before you start to assemble your cover, attach any applique to your main piece of fabric. Where to place any applique is indicated on the pattern template. The next step is to make the ties. Take your pieces of fabric for each of the ties and press them in half, then fold them in and press again. Press that down and then sew down each side of the tie, folding in the end so that you've got a neat finish at one end. Then go across the end and then back down. This way you won't have any threads coming out of the end that's going to be showing. All of your loose ends, all of your edges and threads are at one end. Get the next one. Start at the raw end. Just carry on chain piecing through. You don't need to cut the thread off. Just keep going to the next one. Once you've got your outside layer prepared with any applique added, the thing to do now is to assemble the layers of the cafetiere. So first of all, put down your outside layer, right side up. And then position your ties, and you do this by lining them up with the template, the marks on the template. Right, so the next layer is the lining. Now place the lining so that the bottom lines up. Put that there. Then in my case, I'm going to be having Insulbright, and that's going next. There, line it with the bottom. So you've got your extra bit of lining here. That's right. So now we pin this. So I do it like this by pinning to the corners, but not right up to the edge. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew through all the layers down here with a 1/2 inch seam allowance down here, down along the bottom and up to the top. So back stitching here and back stitching here. Now when you are going through all these layers, be careful because you've got quite a lot of layers plus the insole bright, which is quite thick. Oops, go back to my correct stitch. Take your pins out, but before you do any trimming, because you will want to trim the seam down, but before you do that, turn the cover around the right way first to check that you've got all of your edges in all right and you haven't got anything caught in the wrong place and you haven't got any gaps, because it's quite easy to miss a layer. So be careful when you do this, because of course don't forget you've got your pins in. So you can take these out now as well, the pins that were holding the ties in place. You can start to see what your cover's going to look like at this point. There you go. So there's no holes there or bits of seam missing or anything like that. Very easy to not get your ties in the seam properly, but they're fine, so give those a pull and check. So then we'll go back round the wrong way, like this, and we're going to trim off this seam allowance up to the stitches, and this will make it all sit a bit neater. So cut up there like that and then go across the corner along the bottom, so turn back round the right way. Now the next step is to give this a press, and then we're going to top stitch all the way around where we've just sewn. So make sure that you've got your seam neatly down here and you're not pushing it over either way. Do be careful because you're going through lots of layers and you could break a needle. So the cover's almost finished now. You just need to add the casing for the elastic. Fold the casing and press it as per the instructions. Remember that we've cut the lining a little bit longer than the outer. So the thing to do now is to make sure that that's lying flat and just put a few pins in like this, just to keep it flat. And what we're going to do is sew down here to make a neat finish. So you can see you've now got your casing ready. You've not got any stitching showing under here. So tie up your ties, thread your elastic and pull it tight so that you can still see the top of the plunger through the gap. I always do this with a few knots, or you can overlap the edges of the elastic and sew them on the same machine. Tie it up tightly and then trim off the excess. And now your cafetiere is ready. Thank you for watching. I didn't film the next stage, which is to thread your elastic through the casing, leaving at least a few inches at either ends.